Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to a brand new HMSB news video. Today we're going to be doing a top 10 on my top 10 riders of the 2020 season in no particular order, and it's also, my personal top 10. Some of these you might agree with, some of you might not, so make sure you leave your list down in the comments, like on that previous video that we done on the channel the other day. But we're going to start it off with the world champion, seeing as he is obviously the world champion, the newly crowned world champion, Joanne Mir. Obviously ended up P1 in the World Championship, had that one win and the 7 podiums, and he was obviously one of the most consistent riders in the World Championship this year. So he's definitely obviously the top rider. Obviously led him to win that World Championship, because while the rest were making mistakes and not scoring, he was always there chipping away slowly at it, and obviously got that one important win where he needed it in the Valencia Grand Prix. So he could say that he did win a race and when he would win the World Championship. And great season in general. Obviously great season for Suzuki. Obviously Alex Rins is also on this list a little bit later on. And yeah, that's Joanne Mir. Moving on, we have I've chose Paul Spargero. He finished P5 in the World Championship, got 5 podiums for KTM. Obviously ended up being the top KTM rider. Obviously will move to the HRC team for next season. But yeah, I thought Paul Spargero had a great final season for KTM. Very successful. Obviously 5 podiums. Unfortunately couldn't get the first win for KTM. That ended up being Brad Binder. And then obviously Miguel Oliveira won a race. So pretty unfortunate that Paul didn't. He should have probably have won Austria. But the pit board kind of told him to defend, and he allowed Jack Miller to attack him. But 5 podiums is a pretty good season for him. He was pretty strong and consistent, and he kind of makes less mistakes now, I guess you could say, than what he used to. So he could get those results in, and he missed out on a couple more podiums. Obviously that Bruno race could have been another one. Yeah, Paul Spargero, great season from him, and we will be seeing him go to the HRC Honda team, which is going to be pretty interesting. Then we have Joanne Zarco. He ended up P13 in the World Championship, pretty low down, but for the bike and the material he had, he done a great job. He obviously got 1 podium, and then he got 3 top 5 finishes also, and he will be moving to the Pramac team as a promotion. Obviously, like I said, he done a great season considering he was on one of the oldest Ducatis out there. It didn't work everywhere. Some tracks it was decent. That's obviously where we saw him perform well, and then other tracks it was just sort of like a midfield bike, I guess you could say. But like I said, great season for him. Obviously his first year on a Ducati, and he adapted pretty well, honestly, compared to the KTM and the Honda which he had rode previously. The Ducati definitely seemed to have suited his style more, and when we did see him pretty strong, he was definitely pretty quick. He wasn't messing about on that Avintia, so it's going to be interesting to see him on board the Pramac. Obviously slightly better, more kind of up-to-date material, so that's definitely going to be interesting. Moving on, we have Miguel Oliveira, obviously from the Tech 3 KTM team, P9 in the World Championship with 2 wins, obviously one at his home track in Portimao and Austria. So great season once again, from another KTM rider with a slightly different riding style, I guess you could say. It was a great thing that KTM managed to do this year, where the bike would work with everyone. He also gets promoted into the factory team with Brad Binder. So that's going to be pretty interesting. It's going to be the similar bike, because they do all kind of have factory support. So it's going to be just kind of like a color switch with more mechanics and more personnel around. So that's going to be interesting. Moving on, we have Franco Morbidelli, P2 in the World Championship, obviously top Yamaha rider, 3 wins and the 5 podiums. Franco Morbidelli done pretty well, obviously ending as a top Yamaha rider, 2nd in the World Championship. A lot of people would have thought it was going to be Cartararo or maybe Vinales, but Franco Morbidelli pretty consistent throughout the year, very strong. When he got in his mojo, he was unbeatable, and it's going to be interesting to see what he can do next season. Obviously partnered with Valentino Rossi, his mentor, I guess you could say, from the Sky well, not the Sky, but you know, the VR46 Academy, obviously Sky being their main sponsor. Yeah, Franco Morbidelli going to be very interesting to see what he can do next year, because you know, this year he's definitely found his feet in MotoGP, you know, getting his first podiums and first wins, obviously joint with Cartaro on most wins in the season, so very good season for him, and like I said, very interesting to see what he's going to do next year. Next up we have Alex Rins, P3 in the World Championship, 1 win and the 4 podiums. Honestly, Alex Rins done a pretty great season, you know, considering the injury at the beginning. You know, he done a great comeback to be fighting for the World Championship, obviously ending P3 in the end, but you know, if you remember Jerez, I think it was, you know when he broke his shoulder, and obviously from there on, you know, was struggling to, you know, get the best out of the bike and that. And, you know, considering where we ended, like I said, P3, you know, with that 1 win and then 4 podiums, I'd say it was a pretty good season overall for him. And moving on, we have Fabio Cartaro. Pretty surprising season from Cartaro. Finishing P8 in the end, but he did get 3 wins and the 3 podiums. Obviously, every time he stood on the podium, he won the race, so that was a 100% little podium win record, I guess. But great season, I guess you could say at the beginning, but midway towards the end, you know, things got a little messy for him, I guess you could say. He's going to be seeing a sports psychologist for this upcoming season, so hopefully that sorts him out, because we was definitely probably expecting a little bit more than P8 in the World Championship from Cartaro, so a little bit disappointing in that regard. But you know, the beginning of the season was very strong. He's obviously joint with Franco Morbidelli for most wins in the season, and yeah, it's just unfortunate that the last part of the season was a little bit of a mess, but he also gets promoted into the factory team alongside Maverick Vinales, so you know, hopefully next year, you know, everything goes better for him. Moving on, we've got Andrea Dovizioso, P4 in the World Championship, 1 win and the 2 podium appearances. Honestly, you know, consistency was the only thing keeping Dovi in the fight this year for the World Championship. Him and the new Michelin, they didn't connect at all, and he was definitely struggling, you know, to be competitive everywhere. Obviously, got that 1 win in Austria. That's when they went back to the previous tyres, the last year's Michelin. So he connected instantly and obviously won the race, which was pretty good. But you know, as for the new Michelins, that was a little bit of a disaster, honestly, for him, and then obviously Petrucci. But like I said, you know, the consistency kept him in the fight. He finished P4 in the end, and you know, he was in the fight for a long time, considering, you know, he wasn't fighting at the front of any of the Grand Prix. So good season for him, I guess. You know, good effort, considering, you know, he didn't enjoy riding the bike whatsoever. He's obviously, you know, taking a sabbatical. Could possibly be you know, a retirement from MotoGP. We might not see him back in the future. You know, coming back from a sabbatical could be pretty hard, but we'll soon see. He's obviously a great rider. Moving on to another Ducati rider, we have Jack Miller, P7 in the World Championship, 4 podiums. You know, he was usually the top Ducati rider, honestly, throughout the season, but he made slightly more mistakes, you know, than Dobby would, and you know, he crashed out a couple more Grand Prix, had some, you know, mechanical things here and there, so you know, he was usually the top rider. You know, he done a better season, I guess you could say, than Dovi. He just kind of made slightly more mistakes, but he's obviously getting promoted into the factory team. We've got a lot of promotions in this next season to the, you know, the factory teams from the satellite bikes, which is pretty exciting to see. And obviously Jack Miller being another one, he's going to be joining obviously the factory team, all red, which is going to be very interesting, and to have more people around him and more factory support, obviously being in the factory team. It's going to be interesting to see what he can achieve. And to round off the top 10, we have gone for Alex Marquez, P14 in the World Championship, 2 podium appearances. You know, I think he done a pretty good season, considering he was a rookie hopping onto a bike which not a lot of people can ride. And obviously at the beginning of the season it was kind of tough, but you know, they managed to find a setting, and obviously him adjusting his style, and you know, he got pretty decent towards the end. Obviously those 2 podium appearances were pretty strong rides. Unfortunately couldn't carry that kind of momentum any further. Obviously he had that crash in Aragon, and then from there onwards it was a little bit more less competitive, I guess you could say. But you know, when he did find his mojo, he was very strong, and I do feel like in LCR with the less pressure, he's going to be able to, you know, achieve some good results, and we'll probably see him, you know, in that team in the future again, you know, the Repsol team, alongside his brother. So yeah guys, that's my top 10. Make sure you leave it down in the comments which are yours. Leave a like and subscribe for more content as always, and I'll see you with some brand new videos very soon.